Welcome back, boys and girls. Again, this is Real Big Ten Football Talk +1 with Chris. I am Chris. This is the second game, or the second matchup of this week for us. And without further ado, let's get to the matchup. Now, you'll probably be asking yourselves a lot when you see this matchup in the title. Well, Chris, why are you doing a game that's obviously foregone? It's already concluded. Penn State's going to win this game by a lot. Well, to answer that question, I would answer it with this. Penn State's desperate. Okay, they've lost 2 straight. In fact, they've lost, I believe, 2 straight at home. They need a win. They crave a win. They have to win. They're 1-2 in Big Ten play. So why does that matter? Well, desperate teams can make mistakes. Penn State has made some mistakes, and it has costed them. We will go over those mistakes here shortly, but that is why I'm doing this game. A lot of you would think, well, it's Indiana. They're not going to beat Penn State. They've only beat them once out of the last 21 attempts. If you follow this series at all, you would know that. Well, Indiana isn't a horrible team. I mean, they're 4-3. They're 1-3 in Big Ten play. Not an explosive team by any stretch of the imagination, but they're still decent. And Penn State's still desperate. Penn State can make mistakes, and Indiana can take advantage of them if Indiana can play good enough football for all 4 quarters. I'll go over all of that here in a moment. First of all, let's look at, well, I didn't mean to put this here, but we'll go right into this. No, we're going to go here first. There we go. Let's look at what teams these 2 teams have played. Penn State has clearly had the tougher schedule than Indiana, but Penn State has also struggled. In their first game of the year, neither team played high-profile competition, but here's an interesting side note that a lot of you might not have realized, and I thought it was very fascinating as I was watching this game. Penn State's first game of the year, App State. Those of you that might have forgotten, or maybe a lot of you viewers, or maybe quite a bit younger, and you may not even remember this game. But 10 years ago from that day that Penn State played App State beat the Michigan Wolverines in the Big House in 2008, which was the first game of the BTN's history. And App State ended up beating Michigan, and that was, of course, the beginning of the end of Michigan. But that's not what this video is about, but it just tells you how important of a win that was for Penn State. It seemed like history, everything, the planets were aligned, whatever, for App State to pull off an upset, but they didn't. Penn State held them off, and App State, I believe, is 5-1. So it was actually a pretty good win for Penn State, considering App State is a Sun Belt team. They were an FCS team 10 years ago. On and on and on. I know that. But it was still a good win in my book because of everything surrounding it. Pittsburgh, another great win for Penn State, and that was in Pitt. Not an easy place to play for a lot of teams. Kent State, not a good team by a stretch of the imagination this year, but Penn State did dominate them. Another good win. Illinois played USF tough, which USF is now ranked 23rd, have not lost a game yet this year. And Illinois played them tough. Penn State hammered that Illinois team in Champaign. Again, good win. They played Ohio State tough to the end. They should have beaten Ohio State. When we look at that game's stats in a minute, you'll see why they should have beaten Ohio State. They just couldn't quite do it in the end. And Michigan State, that was just a bad loss. Michigan State wasn't ranked. Penn State should have beaten them. They should have bounced back from that loss against Ohio State at home, and they couldn't do it. That's why I say it's a red, bad loss. Looking at Indiana's schedule. They beaten Virginia, a good win, a good out-of-conference Power 5 school win. That's a good win. Ball State, that's not a good win. They only won 38-10, and Ball State is not a really good team out of the MAC. FIU, they're in FIU, so not awful. As far as at least it was a road win out of conference. But I don't remember what conference they're in. I apologize, FIU fans. I believe you're in the Conference USA, but I can't swear to it. Either way, not an impressive win, but it's still a win regardless for Indiana. Michigan State, bad loss. Bad loss. They got dominated at home to a team that they really had a chance to beat. At Rutgers in Piscataway. Don't care where they played them. Rutgers has been a horrible team this year. They should have beaten them by more than that, but it's still a conference opponent. So I'll give them a yellow font versus a red. But it was not a great win. Ohio State was actually not a bad loss. If Indiana would have played all 4 quarters in that game, they would have beaten that Buckeyes team. At least they would have had a better chance. But they didn't. They played Ohio State tough in the first half and fell apart in the second half. That's been the trend for this Indiana team most of the year against quality competition. They can't play all 4 quarters. They play tough first half. That team they're playing against made second half adjustments. Indiana just seems like they just don't have enough in the playbook to compete against these higher profile teams. And it shows in the second half, where they actually were held scoreless, I believe, against Ohio State in the second half. Not good. Virginia, same way. If you looked at the second half stats, I believe Virginia held Indiana to no points, but Indiana still had a good enough defense to coast with a victory. Still shouldn't have been that close, considering Indiana had Virginia on the ropes 20-7 at the end of the first half. And of course, that Iowa loss, which is a horrible, demoralizing, awful defeat for Indiana at home to Iowa, which again, winnable opponent, they just couldn't get it done. Now, we backtrack here. Again, I apologize. I meant to put these in ahead of this slide, but oh well. We look at Penn State's marquee game. I know it's weird to have it as a loss, but it was the best game against the best opponent Penn State's played. Of course, it was a loss at home, but it was a good quality opponent that they barely lost to. And if you look at the stats, honestly, it's a head scratcher why Penn State lost this game. They had the ball longer. They committed less penalties. They had more yards. They had more rushing yards, more passing yards. But the key thing to look at that I think was Penn State's downfall was their down efficiency and lack of passing completion percentage. They were only at 50% passing. Ohio State was well over that. Ohio State threw more touchdowns, but had that one pick. Trace McSorley had no picks, but he only threw 2 touchdowns, and he was still only 60 of 32 passing. I do believe that was one of the factors that led to Penn State's downfall. That and Ohio State started getting points, started getting plays, and the tides turned for Ohio State, and they didn't turn for Penn State. But this was still a good statistical performance by Penn State against a good quality opponent in Ohio State. That's why I bring this game up. Despite the fact that Ohio State had 10 penalties for under 5 yards, they still won, which is a red flag for me for Penn State. Any team that plays against a team that has 10 penalties should be able to win that game. And considering Ohio State only had 119 rushing yards versus Penn State's 206 yards, Penn State controlled the line of scrimmage. They had more passing yards. They had less picks thrown. They had more total yards. And they had less penalties, more first downs, and held onto the ball longer. But their third down efficiency rate was horrible, and their passing completion percentage was pretty bad. I think that's what opened up the game for Ohio State to start getting some points, because Penn State kept going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out in the second half. Ohio State took advantage of it, and they prevailed. Okay, Indiana's marquee win was against that game that I just talked about, Virginia. Both teams in this game did awful in the passing game. In fact, there really was no passing game. Peyton Ramsey did awful for Indiana. I don't know what Virginia's quarterback's name is, but he also did horrible. Indiana barely was 50% passing, whereas Virginia was less than 50% passing. Both quarterbacks did well not to throw a pick. They both had 2 passing touchdowns with no picks. Neither team really committed that many penalties. Indiana committed 6, but it was negligible if you look at the penalty yards, so you can't really count that. Both teams held onto the ball about the same amount of time. What allowed Indiana to win was their rushing attack, their third down efficiency, and the fact that they just scored too many points for Virginia to come back from in the first half. Because Indiana didn't score any points in the second half, as I already said. Indiana outscored Virginia 20-7 at the end of the first half. Virginia scored 9 points in the second half, but that was it. But it was enough for Indiana to come up with a victory. So that was Indiana's marquee win against a non-ranked, but out-of-conference Power 5 school, which is something to be said. Even if it was at home. Looking at the last 5 meetings, this has not been a good series for Indiana. The last time they beat Penn State was at home in 2013. And this game is at home, but either way, if you look at the last 5 here, Penn State's dominated this team except for 2014 and 2013. 2013 they lost, and 2014 they barely beat them. But still, Indiana does not have a habit of being the big, heavy hitters of the Big Ten. Look at Indiana and Ohio State. We looked at that game earlier in the year. Awful, awful, awful against Ohio State. And they've done awful against Penn State. I don't know how they've done against Michigan, but probably similar. Awful. But we are not here to talk about history today. We're here to talk about the here and now. And again, the reason why I'm doing this game in the first place is, 1, they both have winning records, and 2, Penn State is reeling and they're desperate, which means they are more prone to make mistakes because they're desperate for a win. So that's where it can help Indiana in the end. That's why Indiana has a chance to win this game, and that's why I'm doing this video, because Indiana does have a chance. Didn't have a chance, I wouldn't even do this video. Rushing. Indiana's pretty awful. Penn State, pretty good. In fact, that's Penn State's one real bright spot on their offense is their running ability. 251.8 yards per game on average, 12th nationally. Rushing defense. Penn State hasn't been great, but Indiana's rushing offense is worse than that. So we don't need to elaborate on that too much. You can see the stats on the screen. Indiana has given up more yards than you would like on defense running the ball, which is going to hurt them. It's going to help Penn State immensely, considering, like I said, they want to get a win. And how do you get a win if you're an aggressive team? You run the football down the throats of the opposing team because you're that angry, because you want to make that much of a statement, because you want to show you've taken their will. And that's what I think Penn State's going to do against Indiana, against that substandard running defense Indiana has. Look at the passing splits. Indiana has done well in the completion percentage. In fact, they're ranked 10th nationally in passing completion percentage. That's the only thing they've got going for them in the top 10 of any category as far as I know. So that's not great for Indiana. Penn State, awful, awful, awful accuracy-wise. 101st nationally, 55.4% completion percentage per game for Penn State. That's terrible. If you're ranked number 18, you wanted to go to the playoff. That's not how you do it. Passing per game. Penn State's also substandard at best at 239.3 yards per game. That's 62nd nationally. That's not up to standard with where you want to be if you want to compete with the higher profile teams around the country. You have to be more balanced on offense. Sacks allowed. Penn State has allowed Trace McSorley knocked down with the ball in his hands 10 times this year. That's 43rd nationally. Not awful, but definitely raises some eyebrows. Passing yards allowed per game, 209.7. That's 49th nationally. That's not bad considering you played Ohio State, which is almost an air raid offense at this point. So that's not bad, but not great. And you're going up against an okay passing attack in Indiana. They are averaging 249.9 yards per game. That's 53rd nationally. Not horrible, but I can't say it's red because I try to give benefit of the doubt somewhere. Try to give these poor Indiana fans some hope. Your passing is okay, but you've allowed Peyton Ramsey to get on his brand too much at 12 sacks allowed per game. It's 50th nationally. Passing yards allowed per game, that's just horrible. 227.6 yards per game. That's 71st nationally. Indiana, you're not painting yourselves a good picture defensively against a pretty good offense for Penn State. Not balanced, but a pretty good offense nonetheless. If you look at the offensive efficiency, speaking of offense. Average time of possession for both is pretty close. Indiana does hold a slight advantage there, but in a game like this, I'm not looking at time of possession as much. Average starting field position, again, pretty even. Penn State, like I said, third down efficiency. You got to convert third downs. You have to keep drives moving when it gets to third down. You got to keep your defense off the field, keep the opposing team's defense on it. You have to do these things. But you're only sitting at 37.5% third down efficiency per game. That's 82nd nationally. You're not going to win many more games if you continue to play that way, Penn State. Now, on the flip side, you've only given up 7 turnovers per game. Not bad. You've scored touchdowns 85.7% of the time inside the 20. Again, pretty good. Red zone scoring percentage, you're doing very well at 96.4%. That's 9th nationally inside the 20. Commit maybe too many penalties, 6, but we'll have seen from other teams that's about average, 6.1-ish. Both teams are kind of a push as far as the penalties committed per game. It does appear Indiana shoots themselves in the foot with bigger penalties more often than Penn State, since they have left 65.1 penalty yards on the field per game. That's not great for Indiana. Indiana also gives the ball a little bit too much at 11. Indiana's third down efficiency isn't great either, but at least it's over 40%. 42.7 in fact, as it's 43rd nationally. But either way, neither team is real efficient offensively, but Penn State has played tougher competition than Indiana. No real excuse for Indiana to play that poorly on offense, considering their competition, and they haven't gone up against many stout defenses. Indiana State was a stout defense, Iowa was a stout defense, but the rest weren't really, so they should be able to put up better stats than that offensively for Indiana. Overall defensive splits, Indiana, again, just playing bad except for the turnovers game, which is good. And that can help them in this game against a team that is desperate in Penn State. You force some turnovers, give your offense some short field, you can win this game if you're Indiana. If you're Penn State. Sacks is good. Definitely you want sacks, but that's really the best bright spot for you if you're Penn State. You're giving up, you're allowing the opponent to start on their own 26-yard line, basically 27 each game. That's okay. Indiana, that's awful. You're allowing the opponent to start on the same yard line as your offense. That's not winning the field position battle. Penn State, at least you're winning it, but it's not by a lot. At Penn State, you got to get more turnovers going because you go up against a weaker opponent. You need to force turnovers and give your offense a short field and be able to really exert your will on this Indiana team and not give them a chance. You want to do that early. And that starts with turnovers and holding to the ball if you're on offense and knocking the quarterback on the rear with the ball in his hand. That's why you've had 19 sacks this year. It's 13th nationally. That's pretty good. Your defense, not great. Giving up 365 yards per game on average. That's 53rd. But you've gone up against pretty good offenses, especially in Ohio State. So that's not awful considering who you played, Penn State. Indiana, you haven't played great competition. You've only got 12 sacks this year. It's 87th national. You're giving up 385.3 yards per game on defense. That's 70th nationally. Again, do I need to remind you, you have not played great competition for this to be an issue for you. That's pretty bad. Neat little tidbits. Penn State has dominated the series 20-1-0. Indiana got their only victory in 2013, beating Penn State in Bloomington 44-24. Both teams have played each other every year since 2007. But again, Indiana's had one win in the last 21 attempts. This does not bode well for you, Hoosier Nation. Keys to the game. What does each team need to do to win this game? Penn State, you need to get something going through the air to start in order to set up your running game. You've got to use the pass to set up the run. Indiana struggles against the run. You need to use that. You are a stronger, more physically, you're a bigger, stronger team. You need to take advantage of that if you're on offense, Penn State, and defense. You need to give Trace McSorley time to throw the ball. Indiana is awful against the pass. Use this to make your offense two-dimensional. And on defense, Penn State, you got to hit Peyton Ramsey early and often to force him into errant throws. He's already not a great quarterback as far as getting the amount of passing yards you would like. Use that and make him throw less. Put him on the ground more often. Force Indiana to run the ball more. And then stop him on when they're running the ball as well. You got to play angry. You've lost 2 straight. Impose your will on the weaker opponent in Indiana. Force turnovers on defense. You've got to do these things to beat a weaker opponent in Indiana, but a team that is craving a high-profile win. Indiana's got to be thinking, this could be the game. This could be the game we turn the tides. This could be the game we beat a big, powerful Big Ten opponent. This could be the game we could beat Penn State. That's dangerous for Penn State that Indiana feels that way. I'm sure that they do. If you're Indiana, your quarterback is more accurate. Pass the ball more. Try to get more passing yards. You got to play aggressive since you are the weaker team. You're at home. Use the home crowd to your advantage. Steal some momentum from that Penn State team. You've got to disguise your defense to keep Penn State guessing. You can't just do one-sided defense like you've done most of the year. You've got to change it up. You've got to bring in cornerbacks to blitz. Do something to confuse this Penn State offense. Because Indiana, your defense is giving up too many yards to give yourself a chance. You've got to change it up and try something new. You've got to force Penn State into making mistakes. And again, Penn State's desperate, so you can use that to force them into making mistakes. Use this to your advantage at home. And something I didn't put here. Indiana, you got to play 4 quarters of football. You played 2 quarters here. You played 1 quarter here. If you play all 4 quarters consistent, no turnovers, not giving up many sacks, play decent offense, you can win this game. But you got to play 4 quarters consistently. Now, who do I pick? I'm not going to really milk this too much. I don't think Indiana's got what it takes to compete against a very hungry, angry Penn State team. Don't care where they're playing them, on the moon, on Mars, whatever. I definitely think Penn State's going to dominate a much weaker Indiana in Bloomington. And I got Penn State to win 42-20 in a blowout because Penn State is angry. They want a win, and they want to win against a decent opponent to give themselves some confidence moving forward. Penn State needs this. They know they need it, and they're going to get it because Indiana's just too much of a weaker opponent. Penn State hasn't won the games they've been tested in against strong opponents, but they are going to bounce back this week. They're going to hammer Indiana in Indiana. It's going to be a good game for Penn State and a very bad game, a game to forget for Indiana. That's it for this episode. Again, like, subscribe if you liked the video. Share it, please, if you could. That does help the channel grow. Dislike it if you didn't like it. And please let me know why you liked it or disliked it, so I can enhance your viewing experience. Again, thank you for watching. Enjoy the games. And until next time, have a good day. Or have a good one, guys.